No, they're very astute about it.
Good.
Very, very great investment.
Perfect. It's 4 p.m. on Monday, January 13th, 2025, and I will call this City Council study session to order. I do want to thank those who are joining us this evening. A reminder that this is a study session, so there's no public comment. And if Councilmember Hall would lead us in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so I want to note for the record that Councilmember Whalen, Councilmember Hall, Councilmember Preddy, and Councilmember White are all here this evening. Absent is Councilmember Strader, Councilmember Cedar, and Mayor Pro Tem. For staff, we have Director Madden, Planning Manager Stallnecker, Interim Director Robeck, Chief Hernandez, and City Clerk Tricia Summers. Council, we're going to start the night off with the afternoon with a presentation from Sound Transit. Dustin, do you want me to turn the floor over to you or just directly over to Sound Transit?
We can go directly to Sound
Okay.
Transit. Thank you. Great. Thank you, Mayor and Council members. We really appreciate the opportunity to be here in Milton this afternoon. My name's Austin Nielsen, and I'm with Sound Transit's Government and Community Relations team working here in Pierce County. And we're here today to provide an overview on the Tacoma Dome link extension, and specifically the draft environmental impact statement, which was published last month and is now in the midst of a 60-day comment period. So I'm joined today by Kathy Leota, our project manager for TDLE, and just have an overview of the project and some of the findings that are in the draft EIS, and would love to hear your comments and answer your questions. And today we'll try to focus on specifically the sections that will travel through the city of Milton. So if we could advance to the next slide, please. So just a quick refresher, the Tacoma Dome link extension is part of the Regional Light Rail Network that voters approved as part of Sound Transit 3 in 2016. It is currently forecasted to open in 2035, and as I mentioned, we are in the draft EIS phase. This light rail extension will go 10 miles and add 4 stations to the system. It's going to start right around the 320th area in Federal Way and conclude at Tacoma Dome Station. There will be 2 stations that have parking at Fife and South Federal Way, and the significant part of the project will be crossing the Puyallup River to get to Tacoma and complete the section. And right now, for all the designs and plans that we talk about, we're only at a 10% design level, so there's still a lot of design and work that will go through this. And throughout this project, we've worked very closely with your staff, and we really appreciate the time that Dustin and Angeli have as we meet with them regularly each month to try to incorporate that feedback and collaborate with the city. We can go to the next slide, please. A little bit more about the project. As I mentioned, it was included in the Sound Transit 3 plan, and this completes the regional light rail spine that's been envisioned in the central Puget Sound area for more than 50 years and will connect Pierce County to that system, as well as the employment and educational opportunities that will connect with that. This will be the first light rail line in the United States that will actually serve a tribal reservation, and we have a very close relationship with the Puyallup Tribe of Indians and the Muckleshoot Tribe of Indians that we collaborate very closely with on the project. We estimate around 24,000 to 36,000 daily riders will ride the extension. And what that means is that there's a rider that gets on anywhere in the light rail system in our region and uses one of the 4 new stations on TDLE, that's counted in that estimate. One interesting and exciting stat is that a rider who jumps on in Tacoma will be able to get to the airport in 35 minutes without a reliable, congestion-free commute. And if you're going down from Federal Way down to Tacoma, it's in 20 minutes, and between Fife and Tacoma Dome, 6 minutes. Go to the next slide. A little bit about where we've been and where we will be going. In 2018, we began an early scoping process, and that was really working closely with the community with a blank map and trying to help to create some lines and station areas. We then went through a scoping process where we started to narrow down those ideas from our community partners and the public. In July of 2019, the board identified a preferred alternative, and other draft alternatives to study in the draft environmental impact statement. And that just essentially means that there's the leading choice of an alternative based on the information that was available. Then, of course, in 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic happened, and that led to significant challenges and delays for many infrastructure projects across the country, including Sound Transit's. And then furthermore, in 2023, and when we spoke to you last, through our environmental analysis, Sound Transit, in consultation with our jurisdictional partners in the tribe, identified the need to add additional route and station alternatives to the draft EIS. Essentially, that would be within the South Federal Way and Milton area due to some highly sensitive cultural resources that were identified in consultation with the tribe. And then also in the city of Fife due to the complications of the FEMA floodplain around the Fife Station area near the Port of Tacoma. That action in 2023 also removed any preferred alternative designation from Federal Way to Fife. So we do not have currently a preferred alternative station or route coming down from Federal Way to Pierce County. On December 13th, the draft EIS was published by the Federal Transit Administration, and we launched an extended 60-day comment period. That's just to accommodate the holiday season in December and January, to give the community the most time possible to provide their feedback. Later this year, probably likely in the second quarter, we expect to take all this public feedback, all comments received from our jurisdictional and tribal partners for the Sound Transit Board to confirm or modify the preferred alternative. That would still be a little more room, some planning. You can go ahead to the next slide. That actually would then go through to the next phase of the project, which would be work on the final environmental impact statement. We anticipate that that would be published in 2027, and it's actually at that point when the Sound Transit Board would consider all the technical analysis, all the jurisdictional and community feedback, and select what we call the project to be built, which would really lock in the route and the stations that would be constructed. Then as on the line, that would start some design work through in 2027 into 2029, and we anticipate construction would begin around 2029. We go to the next slide, please. With that, we have a lot of information in the environmental impact statement, and we're going to try to cover the key findings and considerations today. I'm going to pass it over to Kathy Leota to talk a little bit more what's in an environmental impact statement, and then walk through some of the findings as it pertains to Milton.
Okay. So the environmental impact statement is the document that will inform tribal nations, agencies, and the public of all of the potential impacts of all of the different alternatives and study options on the transportation system, the natural environment, and the built environment, all these categories that you can see on these slides. The environmental impact statement will also identify mitigation strategies for the impacts. Next slide, please. Okay, so the draft EIS is broken into four major segments. I'm just going to cover the South Federal Way segment, which includes Milton. So the South Federal Way segment, as you can see on the slide, there are four general alignment options. In pink, you'll see the I-5 alignment option, which travels along I-5 the entire way. The blue is the Enchanted Parkway, which goes out to Enchanted Parkway before returning to I-5. And then the orange and the purple are the 99 east and west alignment options. Just to orient you a little, the left side of the figures are north, and the right side of the figures are to the south. Go to the next slide, please. So this slide covers some of the key findings for the two alignment alternatives that travel primarily along I-5. So the pink, the I-5 alignment, and then blue, the Enchanted Parkway, both of these alignments share some common impacts. Both of them impact a highly sensitive cultural resource that the Puyallup tribe has indicated there's no amount of mitigation that would be sufficient to address those impacts. Both of these alternatives also present with some challenges with constructability along I-5 due to steep slopes. The Enchanted Parkway alternative has the most residential displacements among all of the alternatives, which is 40, and this includes potentially displacing an emergency homelessness facility that the King County is in the process of developing. Okay, so I think we can go to the next slide. So now we're going to get into the two alignment alternatives, the 99 West and the 99 East. And as Austin mentioned, these two alignment options were added for study in the DEIF just in 2023 after some of the initial studies identified those, excuse me, sensitive cultural resources that were impacted. So starting with the 99 West, at the north end from I-5, the 99 West option travels southwest past Enchanted Parkway, ending up on the west side of 99 Pack Highway, continues on the west side of 99 Pack Highway all the way through South Federal Way into Milton. And at Birch Street, the alignment passes over Pack Highway, traveling to I-5, the west side of I-5. You'll also see, it's a little hard to see, so apologize for that. There's down on toward the south end, there's a little orange dash line map. That's the Porter Way design option, which is an option for either the east or west. But that option would follow the same trajectory, but rather than crossing over to head toward I-5 south of Birch Street, it would travel past that way just north of Birch Street. Important thing to note with this alternative, yeah, thank you for zooming in on that. So this alternative would have left turn restrictions on 99 at 70. Maybe if you could widen out a bit more again. There we go. Okay. Due to that alignment crossing over just south of Birch Street, there would be left turn restrictions in one area of the corridor around 70th Avenue Northeast. There would be many complex acquisitions along this corridor, a lot of wetland impacts, substantial wetland mitigation required, and among all the alternatives studied, the second most residential displacements among the alternatives, including, well, let me just mention, the right side of the column shows all of the residential displacements, business displacements for this whole segment. I'm also going to tell you what those displacements are just for Milton. So in Milton, this alternative would have 14 residential displacements. 9 of those would be at Cedars RV Court, and 5 would be at the Spring Valley Mobile Home Park. In Milton, this alternative would present 11 business displacements. The Porter Way design option, it reduces impacts to one property, one tribal trust land and some billboards, but it does increase the wetland impacts. As far as transportation, that left turn restriction on 99 at 70th, with the Porter Way option, you would not have that left turn restriction because the alignment has already moved off of Pack Highway before 70th. Okay, so I think we've covered 99 West. Let's go on to 99 East. Okay, so the 99 East alternative, starting at the north end, similar to West, it travels southwest from I-5 across Enchanted Parkway to the east side of 99. From there, it travels along the east side of 99 until we get to 373rd. At this point, the alignment moves to the median of Pack Highway and stays in the median for about almost a mile, about 0.9 miles, until, similar to the previous alternative, at Birch Street, it starts to move off of Pack Highway entirely to travel along the west side of I-5. This Porter Way design option, same story. It moves off of Pack Highway just north of Birch Street. So some key findings with this alternative: it has the fewest residential displacements, 0 in Milton. It would have, among all the alternatives, the most wetland impacts, And the Porterway option would have even more wetland and stream impacts. What else do I want to say? Oh, this alternative has the most left turn restrictions. So by putting the guideway in the median between 373rd and Birch Street, we've had conversations with WashDOT. WashDOT has informed us that we would need to have a barrier in the median, so this would limit left turns along Pack Highway for almost a mile, about 0.9 miles. This alternative, as well as the 99 East and West, they both have complicated acquisitions, just different property acquisitions, lane closures, construction impacts. One other thing I want to mention about the wetland impacts, this would apply to both the 99 East and West alternatives. Again, I want to reiterate the degree of wetland impacts is very large, and the Corps of Engineers has indicated they will not issue a permit unless all practicable measures are taken to avoid and minimize impacts to wetlands and streams. As we move forward in the design, we will certainly be trying to find ways to make every attempt to avoid and minimize impacts to wetlands and streams.
Kathy, business impacts?
Okay, yeah, business impacts. So for the east option, 8 business displacements in Milton, 25 for the corridor as a whole. Thank you for mentioning that. Let's go on to the next slide. So this slide is a comparison between the 4 alignment options. I guess the things to point out are reiterating the 2 alignment options on the left would have the impact of the highly sensitive cultural resource. The no mitigation will be acceptable to address those impacts. Of the 2 99 East and West options, they have similar business displacements, 8 to 10 in the Milton area. The 99 West has more residential displacements, 14 in Milton. And the 99 East has greater wetland impacts and more transportation impacts with the left turn restrictions for about 9/10 of a mile. So there's a lot in there. We've got a couple more slides about this. We're going to talk a little bit about the station alternatives as well, and then maybe we can for questions. But why don't we go to the next slide? This will be a little bit shorter. So we talked about the alignment options. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the station options. The option on the left goes with the Enchanted Parkway alignment. So this is an option that presents some challenges with traffic impacts with buses going into and out of the station at the intersection of 352nd and Enchanted Parkway. A lot of construction impacts to this busy intersection. The I-5 station alternative on the right, also many construction challenges on Enchanted Parkway, and this station location presents with the least potential for transit-oriented development, more challenging for buses to access the station, and non-motorized access is not as favorable as some of the other station options. And next slide, please. And then going on to the 2 station options in south of 99 station options. The one on the west is the Enchanted Station. The one on the right is the 99 352nd station. I want to mention that either of these station locations could be paired with either of the 99 alignment options. So the station option on the left in purple, similar to the station option, the Enchanted Parkway in the previous slide, its location would make a transit access to the station a bit more difficult. We're working with the city of Federal Way, as we're working with the city of Milton to see how much we can minimize business impacts. The transit TOD potential is medium for the station option on the left. Moving on to the 352nd station, which is south of 352nd and west of Enchanted Parkway. This one has the most TOD potential, and the more opportunities for non-motorized access and improved transit access. And I think that we go to the next slide. This slide summarizes some of the station comparisons for the South Federal Way station that I just went over. And I think we could open it up to questions at this point. I think that's the next slide. I think we've gone through them all. Oh, yes.
Council, do you have questions or comments? Councilmember Whalen?
Just to let you know, and we always like your presentations and so forth, but this is the first time we have seen, read, visualized this packet. It's a little bit unfair for a council to make, at this moment, in these moments, all of the statements or all of the concerns that they may perceive to have in a brief, I appreciate your 20 minutes to do it, but I'd probably have a lot more questions than I can think of right now in the 20 minutes that I was trying to observe what you're saying, understand what you're saying, visualize the impact, and comment. So forgive me, this makes this difficult to do. I understand the impact to the tribal lands. I've followed this for probably the last 15 years, 20 years, and so forth. And I have problems with some of the displacing of businesses, displacing of housing and so forth. And I've got a nice little map, but in my mind, I'm trying to rush and visualize what's along this and what would be the actual greater benefit for locating this to minimize the impact into the financial standings in the city of Milton and surrounding neighbors. And I can't decide that. So I'm actually going to stop in a moment and so forth and ask the rest of my council members, can you make a accurate judgment on what you've seen here, how it's going to impact us, and respond within just another minute or two? This is very critical for the city of Milton. When I see things, I think losing 25 or 50 businesses along 99, we've got to consider what that long-term ramification is to our city and what is the, if there is a positive benefit to the citizens or a negative benefit. And which one do I stand on? Which one do I look at? We depend a lot on 99. And somebody just say, well, we'll just take 25 businesses and put it in, rapid transit in it, and you'll have to learn to live with the consequences. We're not ready for that. I'm not ready to judge on it. So forgive me for being abrupt like this, but I would need to sit and, I wish I had had this packet included in my packet so I could have studied it over the last 5-6 days when the packet was put to the public. It wasn't. So I'm going to pass my time right now. I may want more, but this is a very difficult project, a very difficult understanding. And to put this in front of council for a 20-minute review, I don't think we can give you the benefit you expect from us.
No, thank you, Councilmember Breland. I think we certainly understand this is a very impactful decision that's going to impact Milton and the surrounding region, and we would be happy to come back and answer your questions at a future meeting or at a separate meeting. We'd be happy to do that, but recognize this is a lot of information to digest, and we have provide a lot of this material is online, and make sure that you have the links to those if you'd like to do that and take a deeper dive, but always happy to come back and answer any questions that you and council may have.
There's also a benefit for us now that we haven't had in the past, is that I'd like to understand this a little bit better. I'm going to listen to the review
Yes.
of what's recorded and so forth, so that I can capture everything. I haven't noted down everything you had said, so I'm going to forget things. But bear with us if we stammer a little bit here, trying to figure out what is the best idea.
Absolutely. No, we certainly understand this is a lot of information. For this first presentation, we certainly understand this is a lot to take in, and we're happy to come back, or if you have any follow-up questions, we're happy to answer those. I recognize that the official comment period will go through the middle of next month, but there will still be other opportunities to communicate and share comments and opinions to the Sound Transit Board as well. But happy to come back and provide any additional questions or information that you would like.
In the past, I've heard a lot about, what would be a preference as to where to locate the rapid transit. And I remember in the earlier days, it was along I-5, because there is a lot of land along I-5, but there are a lot of no, that's the wrong word to use. There's a lot of areas in there that are very sacred to a lot of people, and I admire that. But there's also a lot of land off this. If we move it off of next to I-5, there's a lot of potential for the cities that live there, for the residents that live there, for the peace, calm, and quiet of the citizens, as opposed to putting it in the middle of 99 highway, as opposed to having it on I-5, which is used to being noisy. So the additional noise to a rapid transit, which the development of rapid transit has gotten a lot quieter and a lot better. Still has land problems to concern her. I can't in 2 minutes and 20 minutes here and so forth judge that and give an opinion. That's just an opening statement from a council member that kind of feel left in the shadow until somebody shines a light on it and you're expected to make some comments on it. And it's hard. I have to go back to page to do that. My fellow council members may not feel that way. I wish the 3 missing council members were here to speak about it. But what could we say in 20 minutes to get on with the rest of our work? I haven't found anything that I've heard tonight that I like. I've heard I've been on council over 20 years. So I think that I've been involved with this for quite a while. I haven't seen a resolution to solving things for the betterment of all of the community, the residents, the businesses. Can we lose 24 businesses in the city of Milton? If it had to go, change, it would change quite a bit and so forth, but I don't know, so I have to understand that. And that's a question, what businesses? 8 to 11 businesses. So we lose our potential. We lose what we have today and the potential for growth in the future by sacrificing those businesses, because they won't be businesses. I don't know what the value, I don't know what the cost is, I don't know how do you even judge that? I could turn around and just say, yeah, throw them out and build a road, build a train road over their business. What is the long-term impact to the small city of Milton? 24 businesses, 12 businesses. What do we lose in accepting this? And what do we lose not just now, but in the future? I'll stop for a little while and let somebody else speak.
Councilmember Peretti?
Yeah, you touched on it a little bit. I'm referring back to slide 12. And I think you had numbers for what impacts, and you just said it a second, on what impacts directly on Milton. Could you give those to us on slide 12 for each of those 4 different alternatives for those first 2 columns or first 2 rows?
Yes, so the 99 West, the residential displacements, the Enchanted Parkway and the I-5 would be, I'm almost certain there's 0 residential displacements for those 2 options. If I'm
For which 2 options?
For the first 2, the Enchanted Parkway and I-5.
Okay.
So the Milton-specific options, I've pretty much limited to the 2 99 options.
All right.
So the residential displacements for 99 West in Milton would be 14.
Okay.
9 at the Cedars RV Court and 5 at the Spring Valley Mobile Home Park. The 99 East residential displacements in Milton would be 0.
Okay.
The business displacements for the 99 option in Milton are 11.
That's the west?
Excuse me, the west.
West, okay.
Yes, and there would be, it's either 1 or 2 less, but at least 1 less for the Porter Way design option, that number in parentheses below it. And then the 99 East option, the business displacements would be 8.
Okay.
Also with the Porter Way option in parentheses being
One less.
1 less.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Kathy, off the top of your head, do you know of those businesses, how many are tribal? Because quite a few are tribal, are they not?
I don't know off the
Okay.
top of my head. There definitely are some impacts to tribal-owned properties.
Okay. Okay. And then as a reminder, we have public comment open until February 10th? Is that, okay.
Yep, that's correct. Yes, February the 10th. And then there was still, all the feedback from that are submitted during the comment period will be shared with the Sound Transit Board as they consider. And then we do anticipate sometime in the second quarter of this year that the Sound Transit Board would take an action to confirm or modify the preferred alternative, which still wouldn't be the final decision, but it would just be kind of confirming where the leading options are at this time.
Okay. And I just need to note for the record that Councilmember Strader has arrived at 4:31. Council, do you have any further questions or for Sound Transit this afternoon? Okay. Councilmember White?
I just wanted to ask from Sound Transit's perspective, what is the advantage that you see for putting the tracks on 99 as opposed to leaving it on I-5? What is it that is the advantage to Sound Transit? And because I don't see any advantage to the city of Milton. So I'm just wondering, why is that chosen as an alternative? And what does it mean to Sound Transit?
I will say going back to in 2023, when we, through the environmental analysis to date, in a consultation with the tribe and the federal government, we identified that there were areas within the I-5 alignment that impacted highly sensitive cultural resources that the tribe communicated to Sound Transit could not be avoided or mitigated. And we had to go back and add alternatives. At that time, we only had one alternative in the project, and that was simply the I-5 alignments, the options in the pink and the blue that were coming down from Federal Way. We then had to go back and add alternatives, and there was just only so many options to develop to get down from Federal Way through Milton and on to Fife and Tacoma.
Because it just seems from a Milton resident's perspective, if 99 were chosen, there would be no benefit to anyone in Milton for that placement, because if they want a station, it's going to be in Federal Way or in Fife. So it's going to cause traffic issues on 99 for left turn issues is what I'm hearing, as well as construction and business loss. So from our city's perspective, at least from my perspective, it would seem that keeping it on I-5 would be the best option for our residents.
But what Sound Transit is trying to say is it's not an option. So that's why they had to come up with the 99 options.
But the option is on the map.
It was, but
We do have the alternatives. We've just heard.
I mean, they're
the
alternatives, but-
communications we've heard from the tribe is that there are highly sensitive cultural resources that are unavoidable and unmitigable.
I thought that those were mitigated. I thought, maybe I misheard.
No, they have not been mitigated. We received a communication from the tribe about
Okay.
there are cultural resources that impacted by the I-5 alignment, so which is why we had to add the alternatives. So they are still considered, but they are, as the chart showed, there are highly sensitive cultural resources associated with both of the I-5 alignments.
So it's an option that shouldn't even be on the map.
We have to go through and leave the options through the environmental process to analyze all of the options.
I see. Okay.
Thank you, Austin,
Thank
for
you for your
clarifying. Councilmember Hall?
Is there any way to go around that highly sensitive area?
Yes, we have explored that, and this essentially determined that the best ways to do that would be to go down Pacific Highway and SR 99.
My concern is Milton is small and our businesses are limited, and we are not really able to grow our businesses to that degree. I would like to know which businesses these are and how long they've been in with Milton, and what would be the loss for Milton as far as revenue.
Councilmember, or Director Madden, do you want to answer that a little bit?
That would be a wonderful question to place in the DEIS, and a full evaluation could be done about what the long-term impacts are to Milton's tax revenue are.
I think that's key of us making our recommendation. How is it going to affect not only our residents, but our ability for revenue?
Understood. And there's no expectation from staff or Sound Transit today for a formal recommendation. This is just an information session. We have till February 10th to provide comment back to Sound Transit, which then they will evaluate.
Thank you.
I just want to note, because we've been in a lot of these meetings, some of the perks, if you want to look for some on 99, is that it will improve sidewalks and lighting and things like that. Yes, Councilmember Whalen?
Well, I wanted to make a comment. I just putting my hand up so
Okay.
that you know when you're finished that I'm
Okay.
anxious to say something.
Okay. So it, especially if it goes down the middle of 99, my understanding is it will force sidewalks on both sides of 99. There are some pros to not having left-hand turns. It will help eliminate a lot of our accidents that we have down there. It will reduce speed as well. And then we definitely can look at the businesses. We don't get sales tax though from the tribal businesses, do we? So I don't know, I don't think there's very many down there that would be affected from a sales tax revenue, but we can look in that as well. But I mean, to be very frank, I think 99 will be the only option. And I know there's alternatives on the map, but from my perspective, 99 will be the only option. And so we have to look for ways to help improve Milton based on that alignment. Councilmember Whalen?
Just a question. What consideration has been given to moving the rapid transit to the east side of I-5? And in the culturally difficult areas, and I haven't seen, complete maps and so forth, but I've also seen other areas where rapid transit trains and so forth have been shifted from one side of the highway to the other for a brief period of time. I don't know what it would impact on the east side that would be so difficult. I know you'd lose probably, I-5 has got a rest area up near the Enchanted Parkway and Meridian, so forth in that area. And there are some constructions, some businesses, but not many businesses sit on the east side of I-5. What can we see that had given us confidence that that consideration is not as good as the other considerations, given the fact that some displace other businesses, some displace other potentials in the future? We don't know what the future is going to look like in business. We're just kind of stymied there, so.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that, Kathy. So we did explore, when we add additional alternatives, the possibility of crossing over to the east side of I-5. What we learned through our consultation with the tribe is that the historic areas of this part of the alignment and where I-5 was constructed, the cultural resources issues actually exist on both sides of the interstate. So there were still the challenges that were presented with the west side of I-5 existed on the east side of I-5. And I think we can happy to follow up with some additional information on that when we went through the analysis to generate explore the additional alternatives in 2023.
Thank you. That's nice to know. They're sacred grounds, and I'm trying to be as polite as I can. I-5 is built over the middle So it's on the east side, it's on the west side, and we've already committed, which you might say, I'll say a sacrilege to their sacred grounds. And we didn't have to move I-5. We don't have to move I-5. We're going to build in the middle of I-5. So, you know, I mean, there's other ways to get this done that aren't presented here. So, and I don't know what type of consideration was given. But the center of I-5 in a lot of areas could take an elevated train, and it does in other areas of I-5. So we've violated the sacred grounds, putting it in I-5. We don't want to do that again. We don't want to violate it with a rapid transit on the east side or the west side, or vice versa. But why not stand it where we've already done that sin? Why not the middle I-5? Why does it have to take up businesses and neighborhoods and discomfort for a lot of residents within the cities? So I'd like to understand that study. I'd like to understand what the difference would be.
I'm happy, I don't have that information today, but happy to follow up with that information on, especially as it pertains to the middle of I-5.
Yeah, because I know they want to come back to a bus station somewhere near Milton. I'd have to look at this again and again. This is, it's been a long time since I've seen fresh information about this subject matter. But throwing that out there for consideration, because I'll study this again, and I appreciate everybody's time and allowing me to speak as long as I have. Thank you.
Any other questions from council before we move forward? Councilmember Strader?
Maybe I missed it. I apologize for my tardiness. What are the specifics about this land that the tribes are objecting to? Do you know what the details are to that? What it is that what area they're talking about?
It's in the area of the Fife Curve. There are some areas that the tribe has identified as cultural resources, which can relate to archaeological and ancient sites that are in the area that they've identified to us cannot be avoided or mitigated.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Well, thank you both for your time this evening.
Thank you. And we're always happy to come back and answer any
Okay.
questions. Oh, yes, we do have a slide. I just want to, on the topic of business, we do have we are conducting a lot of community outreach. We have sent property owner notifications to any property that's been touched by a line or a station in these have received a letter from Sound Transit. We have also sent a mailer with postcard information with links to all addresses, tenants, businesses, residents within a half mile of all of the lines on the map. There's several thousand of those going out. We are also having a number of webinars that are scheduled throughout the comment period that if any resident or property owner would like to participate in that. And we're having a number of public meetings and open houses beginning next week with a Zoom meeting and 3 in person. And then any individual business or resident that would like to meet one-on-one, we'd be happy to schedule that and meet with them either in person or virtually. If there are any groups, Mayor, Council, that you would like for us to approach, we've been in communication with the Fife Milton Edgewood Chamber and some of the civic groups around the community and offering briefings, but we're happy to sit down and brief with them and offer them a presentation and answer any of their questions.
Good.
Thank you, Austin.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And happy to come back anytime.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Council, we have 3 items for discussion this evening. The first one's on page 3 of your packet. It's Resolution 25-1982. It's a purchasing policy, which is a part of our employee handbook. I'm going to turn the floor over to Interim Director Robeck.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. New statutory purchasing requirements became effective in July of 2024, including new thresholds for competitive bidding. The attached purchasing policy section of the employee handbook incorporates these new thresholds and adjusts the limits for purchasing approvals by department directors, the mayor, and city council. As stated earlier, one of the biggest changes in this purchasing policy is the increase of the threshold for competitive bidding. It had remained at 15,000 for several years. So this increase, it's now increasing to 40,000 is a much welcome increase with the rising cost of labor and materials. This should hopefully increase efficiency with purchasing by increasing these thresholds. Also, the limits for approvals have been adjusted, increased to 10,000 for department directors and 40,000, up to 40,000 for the mayor. Anything over that would need to be approved by the city council. The best place to look where kind of all of the changes can be summarized is in the red line version, which starts on page 15 of your packet. So if you have any questions, concerns, I'm available to take any of those at this time.
Council, do you have any questions or comments for Interim Director Robeck? Councilmember Whalen?
Thank you, Mayor. Oh, and thank you for the presentation. This is not the first time I've seen something very similar to this. And a lot of times it has to do with the cost of everything and the ease of government to work with it. I think there was a time if it was $25,000, we had a say in it. And it escalates periodically over the time. I am comfortable with this move to the $40,000 range per se. You know, if it's at 40, we'd get a chance. It used to be if it was at 20 or 25, we got a chance. But that's back when a hamburger cost you 25 cents, okay? Things change. This just makes the government, the directors, and the needs of the city of Washington and the citizens of the city of Washington smoother, but in line with what costs are today. So if I was to ask, am I going to support this? I think you just heard my answer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Strader?
Do you see any downside of this change?
I personally don't. I think that it will increase efficiency in our purchasing. It also reduces some vulnerabilities during an audit. And I just think with the inflation that we've seen and just the rising prices of things, to me, it just makes sense, especially moving that competitive bidding threshold from 15 to 40,000. Now, if that wasn't our choice, the state upped that threshold, but the requirements for competitive bidding can be fairly cumbersome. So to have to be required to do that for purchases as small as 15,000 just was a lot of work. So to me, this has pretty much mostly upsides.
Well, I'm thinking considering the normal vehicle or the mid-sized vehicle is $50,000, so
Right.
it's like, yeah. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
So this will come back to council next week for hopefully approval. So moving on to our next item this evening, it's on page 25 of your packet. It is the first read of ordinance 2104-25 for the GMA updates. I'm going to turn the floor over to our planning manager.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So tonight, we wanted to go over, there's a few proposed changes that have arisen since the Planning Commission's recommendation. Also wanted to be open and available if there's any other questions or comments that came up. Sarah Lukens is here from Framework. She's been our lead on the comprehensive plan version 1 and 2. So in the agenda summary that you received, it identified several, most of them are pretty minimal updates. It's some wording here or there. Sometimes it's adding a goal that have come from the Puget Sound Regional Council, Department of Commerce, or the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. And so those are listed here in your packet on 25, 26, and 27. And then I did note item number 23 is that the Department of Natural Resources, they also provided comments. Most of those, we're going to be going over all of the critical areas ordinance next year, and so it makes sense to roll those comments into that next year. And so I just wanted, for this first section that was triggered by agency comments, is there any questions or comments? And we are looking for sort of a consensus that if the council has no objections, we will make those corrections or changes before next meeting. So I'll stop here and say, is there anything for that first section A? Was there any questions or comments for that?
Councilmember Whalen?
No, thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. I just have a question or two about what are major streets. Okay, we know that Milton Way is a major street, the major street. And we had a discussion here recently about Porter and Yuma becoming, quote, as this says and so forth, to the inventory of major streets. That's his staffing suggestions. Add Yuma, Taylor, to figure TR3, Volume 2, Inventory of Major Streets. Can you define or give us a little idea of what it takes to make those streets, not just in name changes, but in identifying their complete function now? What's the requirements for a major street? If I look at Milton Way, there's a lot of lighting on Milton Way. If I look at Yuma and Taylor, there's very limited lighting. No lighting for several hundreds of feet on those roads. Does it require to come up to the standard of illumination for a major street?
I'll probably have to pull Dustin in for that. So in the table, which I can bring up if we need to, we just basically, it's sort of listing anything that's a principal arterial, minor arterial, collector arterial. And so when we were going through, we realized that two of those, and I'm guessing because they were the last in line, Taylor and Yuma, weren't on that list. So that's why we're requesting them to be added to that list, and they weren't in the agreement. Dustin, are you aware of any illumination? We don't illumination requirements in our street standards. I'm not aware. Yeah. We are currently with GNO going through this next, in 2025, we will be going over all of our street standards. So if illumination is something that council wants us to consider, we can definitely look at that. I don't know that there is any at this time.
Do we have a standard for Milton Way? I mean, a standard that it is expected and maintained on Milton Way with visibility, lights, curb, gutter, sidewalk, several other. I'd like to know what is required on Milton Way that now should not be required or doesn't have to be required on, I'm going to pick on Taylor. Taylor's a very difficult street. It's a 25-mile-an-hour street. It's not a 35 as Milton Way. It has sections that are not within the city of Milton, and the illumination between Meridian and to approximately, I think it's 96th Street in Fife, in Edgewood, it's pitch black. How does that doesn't qualify it to me, in my understanding of a major street?
The reasoning for the reclassification of Taylor was based on volume of vehicles and the growth that we have seen. And regarding illumination standards, as Anjali said, those are in review right now with GNO. And if council would like to prioritize those, we can add illumination standards to those streets. Yuma is already classified as a minor arterial. And so this would, I don't know if you can bring that map up again, Anjali. But this would match Taylor to Yuma, and they have similar traffic volumes and congestion. And so it would bring Taylor up to the standard of Yuma, and it would allow the city to apply for grants that are not available for local or collector.
So by the status of change of the particular street, Taylor, we may be able to receive improvements for that road from the state of Washington.
Reclassifying that street would bring it up to the current reality of what that street is weathering as far as volume, and it would also give us greater flexibility to apply for grants.
Okay, and it becomes similar to, because we're using Milton Way as a benchmark. And I don't think the traffic on Taylor is quite as much today as it is on Milton Way. But I think in the future, it's going to, at certain times of the day and the year and so forth, match it or even be higher for traffic. It's a street that's very difficult. And it's difficult because the illumination between Meridian and close to the dock, I can't tell you where those lights start to shine again, is a dark street.
It's very dark, yes.
Yeah, and if we're recognizing it as on our inventory of major streets, we have the responsibility to eliminate it at a better degree than we do today. And there's no curb gutter and sidewalk on those streets, other than a small spot. Right. And in other places on Taylor, when a house is built and so forth, they've got to put up curb gutter and sidewalk because that's the standard now that's going to run down that street. I just want to be sure we make all of the necessary changes and improvements for the benefit of the public.
Yes, and this wouldn't require a full retrofit of Taylor. It would create a standard, so new development moving forward and new projects would now meet that new standard of a minor arterial.
Same standards that are on Milton Way.
Overall, yes, but Yuma has been developed in recent history, and I would say it was not developed to the same width or to handle the same volume as Milton Way.
Yes, and I think we're all a little disappointed with that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions from council? Okay.
So the other, let's see. So yeah, so then staff, which we just got discussed, is simply it was a miss of in the inventory to just add both Yuma and Taylor. And then it got brought up that if you, let's see, here we go. So up in the north, you can kind of see it up here where it's green. We are proposing, so that currently under the Planning Commission draft was yellow, meaning it was for residential, but that's an open space. It's currently open space on our current plan. It was, again, it just was missed in the transition. So since it's a change from the Planning Commission recommendation, we're just asking permission to change that to green, which is what it should be based on the old plan and what is there, because it's just open space off of the trail. So that just, again, leads to if there's any other questions about volume 1 or volume 2 of the comp plan. And then I guess also, is there any objections to us making these changes prior to next week's bringing it back for action? Okay. All right, then we will go on to the zoning code.
Okay. So the next item before council is on page 33 of the packet. It's the first read of ordinance 2105-25 regarding zoning code. And so again, I'll turn the floor over to Planning Manager Stalnecker.
All right, so again, if you look at your agenda summary, we'll make the same corresponding change to that park open space area on the zoning map to match what it should have been on both maps. And then, so again, based on comments from Sound Transit, we realized that we had When I created the essential facilities definition, we duplicated we already had a public transit facility definition. So I've corrected that. We added, because both I-5 and Sound Transit are looking to go down through the business and the M1 zones, we did change that. We are recommending that be changed to an allowed use in both of those. They will still need to go through major site plan, obtain civil building related permits, but their process, as you can see, is already very extensive. It's a multi-year process of environmental statements and everything. So, but it would only allow it in those. And then Carmos identified 3 corrections also in the use table dealing with supportive housing and transitional housing. So the first 2 are very straightforward. But the third one, so currently we have to allow emergency housing and shelters in any zone that, actually, let me jump it down here real quick. In any zone that allows hotels or lodging. So right now, we have showed, right now we allow lodging in the UMX, but we don't allow emergency housing and shelters. So we have 2 options. We could simply, which is Uptown, Meridian. So we can either remove lodging from the Uptown district, which then we don't have to require emergency housing and shelters, or if we want to allow hotels, motels, lodging, we would have to add emergency housing and shelters. So that's the one that I don't know if there's a preference from council. My suspicion is that you would rather probably just not have lodging along Meridian. I'm seeing lots of nods, which means we wouldn't allow emergency housing and shelters along the Meridian stretch. So I will make that correction.
Question, Angela.
Yes.
Does that allow for the number of beds that were required?
I think so, because we had it that we weren't allowing the housing, so we'll double check our numbers.
Okay,
We have to double check that our numbers allow us to do that, but I think we're okay there. So, so those are the things that staff is recommending, and then I wanted to go through, so if there's any questions on that, we can do that, and then I wanted to go through the major changes in the zoning so that you have a better, so if any questions get taken up. So is there anything on those changes, or would you like me to dig into what we're seeing overall, the Planning Commission's recommendations of major changes in the code? So I'm not seeing anything.
I just have a question out of curiosity because I just don't see lodging on unless I'm missing
So sorry,
it.
lodging is under
Okay,
on non-residential.
so we would take it out of, based on the head nods, we'd take it out of the Uptown district.
Yes, so
And
we
we
would
would
take
only-
lodging, right here, we had lodging as allowed in both Uptown and business.
Okay,
We would take it out of Uptown.
okay,
If not, we have to add it here to emergency housing and emergency shelters.
okay,
So we'll double check our numbers, and if there's any other corrections we would have to do, but
okay. Councilmember Strader?
At present, we only have lodging down on 99, is that correct?
correct, there is no anywhere else. So we're not making anybody non-conforming. Okay, so yeah, so then to go through like I said, I wanted to hit some of the major highlights of what the proposed changes are that have come from the Planning Commission and staff and the consultants. And so the first is that the use table, we've sort of done some restructuring of it and some sort of combining and generalizing some of them. So we have the residential use category, and then we've sort of tied those in. Actually, let me back up let's back up just a smidge. So to the map, this is the new proposed map for zoning. We've added the Uptown mixed use. We've pulled it out from business. So business for now is just along the 99 corridor. in the comp plan, we have identified that we would like to do a more in-depth sub-area plan in the next couple years on that area. So it is now, it's going to remain business, but over here along Meridian, we are doing, we've renamed it Uptown. We've also identified what we're calling neighborhood commercial. So there's these areas that are now pink that are supposed to be commercial, maybe some second story housing, but more just to serve the neighborhood. And then for the most part, we've just sort of renamed the residential to single family to neighborhood residential 1, and our residential medium density to neighborhood residential 2. Multifamily is urban residential. So, and then town center mixed use, which is pretty close to what it was previously. So this is the proposed new map. Again, there's little changes, not huge. The biggest is in this area, and this idea that we have sort of created this neighborhood commercial in areas where maybe some of those areas were manufacturing, which seemed not a real good spot for manufacturing. And so maybe some light commercial would be good. And then, so there is the chart. This was all stuff that you received. No. Did you receive this last week? I don't remember. I apologize. Yes, I think you did. That shows sort of the comparison of everything. So then as we get into the table itself, again, so we've just sort of revised, we've done a residential use category, all of the non-residential, whether it's commercial, manufacturing, it's all kind of in here. And then public facilities. And then we've created a new category that's accessory uses. So the idea is that sometimes you're combining. And so, you can have a restaurant and you can have a restaurant with a drive-through. So the restaurant is going to be allowed, a drive-through is going to be allowed, but when we start looking at these little notes, footnotes, it's letting you know that there may be extra criteria, design criteria, when you're dealing with a drive-through or outdoor storage or different things. And so the idea is that you may have, if you have one in each category, there's going to be extra stuff that'll be related to that. And then we actually created a prohibited in all zones section. It's not exclusive. There's another section that says in MC 24-44016, it kind of says if it's not an obviously close to something that's in an allowed use, we're going to assume it's prohibited. But we felt that there were certain things that it would be very good to just, marijuana, that was already in there as prohibited. We are junk and salvage yards, landfills, data centers. Data centers take a large amount of electricity for very little value to a city. And especially since we have our own electric company, the recommendation was to prohibit data centers. So it's to try to bring out, one of the things that is a change is self-storage. We kind of feel like there's enough self-storage lots in Milton. And again, they don't even have anyone on site anymore. There's no jobs. There's very little property tax value. We clearly made no semi-truck storage lot. That's something we get calls at staff level all the time. And again, not a lot of value to the city. So those are the things that we decided to create in a prohibited in all zones. And then I guess if I can briefly stop there, if there's anything on that table. If not, I'll go into the development tables.
Any questions, Council? Councilmember Whalen?
I appreciate the presentation, and I appreciate the work of the Planning Commission and the City of Milton in moving forward. But can I ask a question? We're referring to some documents that we have seen elsewhere. But in a document of this particular nature, if we're referring to other changes in documentation, can't we see copies of it in this? You know, you've said a lot, you've shown a lot and so forth, but it seems to be a little bit incomplete. So when this comes back to council, can the slides that you've represented and the information you represented be in that packet?
Yes, everything next week will have a red line, well, all of the development codes will have a red line version and a clean version, and you will have full copies of the comp plans to be adopted. So everything will be in the packet next week.
Yeah, even the first read like this and so forth, the sooner we get to be more involved with or understanding the documentation, the easier it is to half understand it this week, fully understand it next week, and move it forward. It seems to be a little bit incomplete for even this study session. But thank you very much.
Councilmember White?
Yeah, could you please remind me the difference between neighborhood residential 1 and 2?
Yes.
What's the difference?
Yes. So neighborhood residential 1 is the equivalent of our, actually here, is the equivalent of our current single-family residential. It has a minimum lot of 8,000 square feet, minimum lot width of 75, height of 35. So it's intended to be this, it's the largest residential lots we have. NR2, you can actually go as small as 4,000 for lot area, as well as it only has to be a width of 45. It also allows with what's called a conditional use permit, which means it's a hearing with the hearing examiner. They can actually do some multifamily if they go through that process. So where in the NR1, it's only single-family duplexes and ADUs.
All right, thank you.
All right, so starting in, which leads us into the land development dimensional regulation tables. So I don't believe anything has changed in the minimum lot areas. With this idea that we have to do, that there are now 2 ADUs allowed for every single family house, it sort of takes away, we created a new category, which is the maximum dwelling units per lot category for the NR1 and the NR2, because it's not so much about density per se by acreage, it's that you can allow 3 units per lot. So no matter the acreage. So the state requires us to allow 2 ADUs for a single family home, which is how we came up with the 3. And the little footnote does say it can be attained through a single-family residence with 2 ADUs. We also, it's not required by the state regulations. They came out after the fact and sort of clarified. But the current proposal allows 1 ADU if you have a duplex. And while it's not required, the feeling from staff and the consultants and the discussion that was held was that there's not a huge amount of difference between a single-family home and 2 ADUs when they can be as large as 1,000 square feet, or a duplex with 1 ADU. And so it provides a little bit of options for property owners. It allows, again, our numbers are not huge. I don't see, looking across the city, there's not a lot of duplexes that would probably have enough room, but it would allow if someone wanted to add an ADU. So that's how we came up. Seems like that way made it a little bit easier with, this is how you get 3 for both of those options. And then again, we also then the standard net density is once you get into per acres, dwelling units per acre, gets into when you're doing multifamily. So again, in the neighborhood residential 2, if they want to go through that conditional use process, which is that extra longer process, They could do, that's the same as it is currently. This is not a change. This is what we currently allow. They could go up to 12 units per acre if they were doing multifamily. Or if there's what's called a bonus. And again, we currently allow bonus if they are doing an adult retirement community. With state law, there's a few other things that can allow, let's see. So the only thing for for 3 is if it's a retirement community in the NR2 and in the multifamily. Once you get into we have some mixed use. When you get into mixed use, there's some state laws that require some bonuses if it occurs on upper floors of buildings, or if it's like if you're converting a formerly commercial building into a residential, it's a bonus for that. So those are only in the mixed use. And then there's also legislation that says if a religious organization owns the property, they get a bonus. And so the proposal was this idea that these were the numbers that we proposed, that they could have additional dwelling units per lot. And then again, there was no changes to the minimum lot width. So I'll stop here for any questions or comments on the development dimensional regulations.
Councilmember Strader?
Is there any restriction on the amount of people that can be in these dwellings or original houses?
The short answer is not really. I mean, because there is under the building code, but in most cases, we don't regulate how large a family is in a house. So the short answer is no. If they're living as a family, as a unit.
What's to prevent just boarding houses being propagated throughout the city then?
So they would have to demonstrate that there is language, 2 things on that. There is language that we will look at this year to actually allow, there's a state law that allows the kind of the idea of a boarding house, but it's actually only in mixed use or multifamily areas. It wouldn't be allowed in the residentials. So they would have to demonstrate that they are working as a family unit. So you couldn't, the idea being that, you can't necessarily like have individually locked rooms that they have rent specifically for that. You could have 6 roommates that all chip in. They're all sharing facilities. Obviously, that's what group homes are. They're all chipping in. So it's basically how are they interacting?
So in essence, you could have as many people in, say, 1,000 square foot dwelling.
There's a point of it becoming insanitary, but again, though, if you have a family that has 6, 7 kids, we don't regulate in their house unless it becomes a sanitary unsafe issue and we have to call CPS or something. So.
Okay. And what about, what's the definition of a family member? Is that cousin, uncle, whatever?
So again, it's not so much blood related, it's how they're interacting. If they're like, we are working as a family unit, then that falls under, it can be related or unrelated if they're choosing to work on that as again, it's a little bit grayer, but it is because how do you define family when people choose their own family?
Okay. I think it's pretty clear that you can call what a family is, and that's usually blood related. And I understand there's some other dynamics that go along with that. People that, maybe they don't have any blood relatives and they still consider them family. But it just seems like it's just way too open. that there's no guidelines or restrictions of any kind.
Yeah. At this point, you're running into both federal and state law as it comes to ADA, as it comes to, again, if you decide, again, there's a level of where do you allow the government to say, because I'm not married or because I took in my daughter's best friend, that they're not family. So there's that fine line. So you're looking at, if there was a situation where there was a complaint and there was people coming and going and we could investigate, and if we made the determination that we really felt like it was more of a boarding house than people rooming, there's probably some stuff we could do. At this point, again, those are pretty rare in any, and if that was the situation, we'd investigate it. In most cases, that's not going to be an issue because people want to know who they're staying with.
Well, it just appears to me it's very vague, and so that just opens it up to all kinds of interpretations and people skirting around the rules. So I know that's not up to you. So anyways, thank you.
Yeah, there's a state law basically that says that you cannot limit the number of unrelated people who live in a household.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we're coming from. Yeah.
Any other questions from council?
All right, I'll move on to the next one. This is the building bulk table. So this one deals with sort of the size and location of where the building is set. Planning Commission did add a couple categories. So the maximum height stays the same. Maximum total structure coverage stays the same. We have not previously had a maximum impervious surface coverage. Here, if I can get my pointer to work better. Here we go. So we have added a maximum impervious surface. So impervious surface is structures, driveways, includes gravel unless it's like river rock. So the idea is that it does limit, the proposal was to limit the amount you can cover with things that water cannot run through in the NR1 to 50%, NR2 60, and then it goes across. So that's a new category. This one, maximum footprint per building, is a new category. So the idea being that on a lot, it'll be most impactful probably when you get into like multifamily or a larger lot, that each individual building, it could have multiple floors, but each individual building, the footprint, like for multifamily, couldn't be more than 4,000. So the idea being, instead of one huge building, you would chop it into slightly smaller buildings, which would blend more with the more houses and residential in the neighborhood. So that's a new one. The minimum distance between structures, it hasn't been in this table. It sort of was, there was phrases throughout the code, so I brought it into the table so it'd be easier to find. And then we've added this build to line. And again, it's just for the mixed use, and so those that are commercial, more commercial in nature, more pedestrian commercial. Again, it's been in the uptown design guidelines, the idea that you want at least that first building. So in the case of like Sherwin-Williams, if they were to build today, it would say they need to be within 10 feet of the front property line and their parking goes kind of behind or to the side. The idea that way your because when you're dealing with commercial windows, statistics show that people, if they can see inside, they're more apt to stop. It's better for the business. It's a little bit nicer to look at. It also it makes it easier for pedestrians, hopefully coming down the street, they could visit businesses and stuff. So that was added just for those. Yeah, so those are the biggest changes to this table. So is there any questions on this table?
Councilmember White?
With regards to the maximum footprint,
Yep.
what is the mix currently, what percentage of our current residential is larger than 3,000?
Probably very little for a footprint. I'd have to look. I would suspect if there is, it's only one or two that would be that for a footprint. It's a very large footprint.
Okay. Thanks.
She might be able to find it real quick. We'll see.
I'm just wondering why that became an issue. I mean, if you have a large piece of property and you want to build a large home, why would we want to restrict that?
So two things. One is, again, for more of the multifamily, it breaks it up a little bit, so it doesn't feel so monstrous, so huge. It also forces you to go up a little bit, which does cut down on impervious surfaces and stuff. So it's a little bit of both.
What about for single family?
What?
What about for the single family? What's the justification for that?
Again, it's similar to that, the idea that mainly it would be the cutting down on impervious surface, that you're gonna, by going up, you're gonna have to take down less trees, tear up less ground, have more yard.
Do most cities have these types of restrictions?
They definitely have the impervious surface coverage, which we have added. This is, I don't know how common
It's pretty,
the footprint.
yeah, that's my understanding. This is pretty common. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, pretty common.
Anything else on this one?
Councilmember Strader?
45 feet height restriction, is that 4 stories or is that?
It's basically 4 stories.
And
Yeah.
so the UMX, remind me again, what kind of?
So that's uptown. So that's going to be all the properties along Meridian. And so it allows them to go 55, which potentially could be a 5-story mixed-use complex.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Oh, it's not going to let me go. Nope, that didn't work. Oh, that is it. So those are the major tables. The rest, there's minor changes in landscaping, but we're going to do a full review of the landscaping this year. So, and the rest of the proposed changes that you got last week, again, are just sort of fine tuning from this. So these were the biggest, like I said, new categories in the new zones. So if there's any last questions or comments, is there any objection to the proposed changes that staff presented? You will get a full, like I said, next week, you will get full red line and clean copies of the zoning changes. You will get full copies of the comp plan with the changes. Were you able to bring the samples? Once we get, once they are adopted, they are going to provide us these really fancy, this is just a sample because it may not have all the changes in it, but we'll have a digital available online, but we also will have some fancy little books for the volumes that show everybody. So, all right, that's the end of my.
So any last comments for Planning Manager Stallnecker before next week? Okay, so that's the end of our meeting for this evening. So seeing that all items have been concluded, we will adjourn at 5:29 p.m.